As the Russo-Ukrainian War enters its 1112th day, a complex web of military actions, diplomatic maneuvers, and geopolitical posturing continues to shape the landscape of this protracted conflict. Recent developments highlight not only the ongoing military engagements but also significant diplomatic activities that could alter the trajectory of the war. With the U.S. reinstating military aid to Ukraine and a U.S. envoy arriving in Moscow for ceasefire talks, the stakes couldn't be higher. On March 13, 2025, the U.S. lifted its suspension of military aid to Ukraine. A move that comes in the wake of productive discussions between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia. The decision to restore aid signals a renewed commitment from Washington to support Kyiv amid claims of renewed Russian offensives in the Kursk Oblast. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy expressed hope that U.S. pressure would lead to a cessation of hostilities and emphasized the need for a reliable, durable peace. Compounding the urgency of these discussions, Russian officials claim to have recaptured Sudzha, a key Ukrainian stronghold in the Kursk border region. The assertion by Russian Defense Ministry spokespersons, while not independently verified, indicates a significant shift in the battlefield dynamics. Putin, who visited the Kursk region recently, has urged his commanders to ensure the complete expulsion of Ukrainian forces from the area, which could embolden Moscow in negotiations. In a notable diplomatic development, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is currently in Moscow to discuss a proposed 30-day ceasefire that Ukraine has tentatively accepted. However, Russian officials have voiced skepticism regarding the proposal. Yuri Ushakov, a senior advisor to Putin, remarked that a ceasefire would merely provide Ukrainian forces with a respite to regroup, asserting that it offers nothing to Russia. This sentiment underscores the Kremlin's reluctance to concede ground without securing significant strategic advantages. The backdrop of these negotiations is complicated by reports of intensified Russian military operations, including drone and missile strikes across Ukraine, which have reportedly led to civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. The Ukrainian military is under immense pressure as it battles not only for territorial control but also to maintain its operational readiness in the face of ongoing assaults. As the U.S. and Ukraine push for a ceasefire, the Kremlin appears to be leveraging its military gains to extract concessions before any formal agreement is reached. Reports indicate that Russia may be seeking preemptive demands as a condition for agreeing to the ceasefire, which could include a halt to Western military supplies to Ukraine. Such conditions could significantly undermine future negotiations and prolong the conflict. Zelenskyy has underscored the importance of international support, highlighting that the recent aid package from Sweden amounting to £106 million is crucial for addressing urgent humanitarian needs and rebuilding infrastructure. Sweden's support, framed as a matter of solidarity and national security, reflects a growing recognition among European nations of the need to bolster Ukraine's defenses. The situation remains fluid, with both military and diplomatic fronts evolving rapidly. Analysts suggest that if Russia perceives an advantage in the current military landscape, it may resist a ceasefire, preferring instead to consolidate gains before returning to negotiations. Conversely, Ukraine's willingness to consider a temporary ceasefire could be a strategic maneuver aimed at gaining international support and repositioning for future engagements. As the conflict continues, the international community watches closely. The potential for a ceasefire, while tantalizing, is fraught with complexities that could either pave the way for lasting peace or further entrench the adversarial positions of both sides. The coming days and weeks will be critical in determining whether diplomacy can yield tangible results or if the war will continue to escalate. In an evolving geopolitical landscape marked by war and diplomatic tension, the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues to dominate headlines. Recent developments have intensified discussions around a potential ceasefire as both sides grapple with the implications of continued hostilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has accused Russia of deliberately prolonging the conflict. While Moscow's officials dismiss proposals for a temporary truce as inadequate and merely beneficial to Ukrainian forces, Zelensky's assertion comes as he expressed disappointment over Russia's lack of a substantive response to a proposed 30-day ceasefire agreement discussed during talks between US and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia. Regrettably, for more than a day already, the world has yet to hear a meaningful response from Russia to the proposals made, Zelenskyy noted in a recent post. This sentiment underscores Ukraine's urgency to secure a durable peace, emphasizing that any delay only serves to extend the suffering of those affected by the war. The Kremlin, however, remains skeptical about the ceasefire's efficacy. Yuri Ushakov, a senior aide to President Vladimir Putin, characterized the ceasefire proposal as a mere temporary respite for the Ukrainian military, arguing that it would not provide any long-term benefits for Russia. "What does it give us? It gives us nothing," Ushakov stated, highlighting a fundamental divergence in the perspectives of the two nations regarding the terms necessary for lasting peace. As tensions escalate, the battlefield dynamics further complicate the situation. Russian forces have reportedly regained control of key territories, including the strategic town of Sudzha in the Kursk region, which Ukrainian troops had captured in a bold offensive last summer. The Kremlin's claims of a successful counteroffensive come amidst a backdrop of increasing violence, with civilian casualties reported on both sides. Recent attacks in Ukraine's Donetsk region resulted in multiple deaths, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Adding to the complexity of the situation, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is currently in Moscow to negotiate terms of the ceasefire. His discussions with Russian officials aim to bridge the gap between the two nations, but skepticism remains high, particularly regarding Russia's willingness to adhere to any agreements made. The Kremlin has also expressed its refusal to accept foreign peacekeeping troops in Ukraine, reiterating its stance that such actions would constitute direct involvement in the conflict. Meanwhile, Sweden has announced significant financial support for Ukraine, pledging over £100 million for reconstruction and humanitarian efforts. This move reflects a growing trend among European nations to bolster Ukraine's resilience against Russian aggression, particularly as Finland has similarly stepped up its military support. As the war rages on, the international community is watching closely, with discussions on both sides indicating a reluctance to compromise. The upcoming meetings between U.S. officials and Russian representatives may prove pivotal in shaping the future of the conflict. Analysts warn that without genuine cooperation and a commitment to peace, the cycle of violence could persist, leading to more devastation and instability in the region. In conclusion, the stakes are high as both sides navigate a treacherous path fraught with political maneuvering and military engagements. The potential for a ceasefire, while tenuous, offers a glimmer of hope for a resolution. However, the divergent views on its terms and implications suggest that any meaningful progress will require substantial diplomatic effort from all parties involved. As the situation develops, the world will be watching to see if a path to peace can be forged amidst the chaos. In a striking display of military resolve, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the Kursk region on March 12, 2025, to rally his troops as they seek to expel Ukrainian forces from territory that has become a focal point in the ongoing conflict. This visit coincides with a significant diplomatic effort from the United States as President Trump's special envoy arrives in Moscow to negotiate a proposed 30-day ceasefire amid mounting pressure on both sides to find a pathway to peace. The Kremlin's hardline negotiating stance was highlighted in a document prepared for the talks, which has been criticized by Russian officials for not adequately considering Moscow's strategic interests. Yuri Ushakov, a senior Kremlin aide, stated that the U.S. ceasefire proposal seemed hasty and primarily reflected the Ukrainian perspective. He emphasized the need for a more balanced approach, indicating that the negotiations would require substantial adjustments to meet Russia's expectations. Putin's visit to the front lines in Kursk wearing military fatigues sent a clear message of determination to both his troops and adversaries. He asserted that the military should fully reclaim the Kursk region, which has seen renewed Russian offensives in recent weeks. Reports from U.S. officials have confirmed that Russian forces are making significant gains, placing additional pressure on Ukrainian troops who are now at risk of being encircled. The Ukrainian military's recent incursion into Kursk, which marked the first occupation of Russian soil by foreign troops since World War II, has not shifted the momentum of the conflict as hoped. The U.S. has resumed military aid to Ukraine after a brief suspension, as Trump aims for a rapid resolution to the conflict sparked by Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. Trump indicated that it is up to Russia now to engage with his administration's peace efforts, warning of potential sanctions should they refuse to cooperate. His envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Moscow amid these tense negotiations, but the Kremlin's initial response has been dismissive. In a bold declaration, Putin has framed captured Ukrainian soldiers as terrorists, a move that complicates the legal landscape surrounding prisoners of war and highlights the Kremlin's intent to prosecute those engaged in hostilities. His rhetoric underscores a broader goal of justifying military actions and reinforcing nationalistic sentiments among the Russian populace. As the U.S. and Ukraine consider their next steps, the situation on the ground remains precarious. The Ukrainian military has expressed its intention to hold its positions in the Kursk region but faces daunting challenges as Russian forces continue to advance. General Alexander Syrsky, Ukraine's top military commander, acknowledged the dire conditions while asserting that the preservation of Ukrainian lives remains paramount. The unfolding events in the Kursk region exemplify a critical juncture in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. With both sides entrenched in their positions, the potential for a ceasefire may hinge on how effectively negotiators can bridge the chasm between their conflicting demands. As talks progress, the geopolitical implications resonate far beyond the battlefield, affecting international relations and security dynamics in Europe and beyond. The coming days will be pivotal in shaping the future of the conflict and determining whether a tentative peace can be achieved or if the fighting will escalate further. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has taken a notably cautious approach in recent public appearances, particularly following a tense meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. During a press briefing in Kyiv on March 12, 2025, he refrained from divulging specific details regarding a proposed ceasefire, with Russia opting instead to project a sense of diplomatic calm. This strategic shift appears to be a response to the tumultuous dynamics between Ukraine and the new U.S. administration, which has raised questions about the future of American support for Kyiv. In the aftermath of a contentious White House meeting that left both leaders at odds, Zelenskyy is keen to demonstrate to Trump that Ukraine is a willing partner in the pursuit of peace. The previous encounter had seen him embroiled in an argument with Vice President J.D. Vance, a confrontation that highlighted the challenges of navigating the unpredictable political landscape of the United States. Since then, Zelenskyy has been advised by allies including Britain and France to adopt a more measured tone, steering clear of provocative statements that could exacerbate tensions with the White House. During the press conference, Zelenskyy characterized a recent meeting between U.S. and Ukrainian delegations in Saudi Arabia as very positive, while hinting that further discussions on security guarantees would take place if a proposed 30-day ceasefire materializes. "We will talk about security guarantees in more detail if the ceasefire goes ahead," he stated, indicating a willingness to engage but without revealing too much about Ukraine's negotiation stance. His responses were marked by deliberate pauses, suggesting a careful weighing of his words in the face of the volatile political climate. When pressed about the impacts of U.S. intelligence sharing on Ukrainian military operations, he opted for discretion, saying, "One day I'll tell you, but I can't answer that now." This careful maneuvering seems aimed at avoiding any statements that could further inflame Trump's already fragile relationship with Ukraine. Indeed, the stakes are high for Zelenskyy, as any misstep could prompt negative reactions from Trump, who has previously labeled him a moderately successful comedian and criticized Ukraine's leadership. The president's caution is underscored by the reality that one tweet can change everything, as he aptly noted, reflecting the precarious nature of the current geopolitical landscape. Despite these challenges, there are signs of a thaw in relations. Following Zelenskyy's conciliatory gestures, including a letter to Trump expressing readiness for cooperation, U.S. intelligence sharing has resumed. This shift may signal a potential for renewed collaboration even as uncertainties linger over Russia's position in the ongoing conflict. Zelensky's recent comments also reveal an openness to a ceasefire that could extend beyond air and sea as proposed by the U.S. He expressed appreciation for Washington's willingness to oversee the technical aspects of a ground ceasefire, indicating a proactive stance in seeking peace. As U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff travels to Moscow for talks with President Vladimir Putin, the outcome of these discussions could significantly influence the trajectory of the conflict. As the situation unfolds, the world watches closely. Zelensky's ability to navigate this complex political terrain, balancing the demands of both his own nation and the U.S., will be crucial in determining the future of Ukraine's struggle for sovereignty and security. The evolving dynamics between Kyiv and Washington, shaped by careful communication and strategic diplomacy, will undoubtedly play a pivotal role in the ongoing conflict with Russia and the broader implications for European stability.